What is up, and welcome to a very special edition of the Bruin Bible. This is your host, Will Decker. I am lucky enough to be joined by Ben Bolch, who's coming back for his second time. He's out in Salt Lake City right now. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct.
Yeah. You getting any skiing or snowboarding in during this wintertime, maybe snowfall out there?
You're making me long for my days of my athletic youth. No skiing or snowboarding. I have been to Park City in the past. You're tempting me here tomorrow to get in an early morning run, but I don't think that's going to happen. I'm a little old, a little out of shape, and a little tired. So I think all those things are going to conspire to make me sleep in here tomorrow and watch some basketball.
Hey, man, that's a pretty good consolation prize for not hitting the slopes. Watching some basketball. He's following our UCLA Bruins. If you don't know him, he works at the LA Times. He covers the football and basketball teams for UCLA. We want to talk about UCLA football here, Ben, and it was a very interesting 2021 season, and this might be the most news we've had for UCLA football in January following a season in quite some time. 8-4 this past year. We got the bowl game canceled, unfortunately, at NC State. But we were a potential win away against NC State in the Holiday Bowl from getting 9 wins. 1 win off of the program record of 10 wins has been done multiple times, most recently by Jim Mora and Carl Durrell back in 2005. A grade from A to F. Where would you rank the 2021 UCLA football season for the Bruins?
Yeah, I would say it was probably – it's a great question. I would probably say it was a B-. I mean, somebody asked me before the season, what do you think of this team? Where do you think their record is? And I wrote on a notebook 9-3 because I thought that was really what this team was all about. I mean, you had so much returning experience. You had 20 returning starters. You had Dorian in his 4th year in the program. You had Zach Charbonnet coming in from Michigan. We had Britton Brown, who we knew was going to be solid. We had a returning offensive line. We had a lot of defensive pieces coming back and some new grad transfers that were promising. So I really looked at that schedule, and I think the one cog that was missing was probably the Fresno State game, right? I mean, if they win that game, they do go 9-3. So, as I wrote with the Chip Kelly return story recently, you could look at it 2 ways. The glass half full people can say, this was our best record since 2014, because in 2015 they went 8-5 and lost the bowl game. But the glass is half empty. People can say, look, we didn't beat a team with a winning record. We were out of contention in the Pac-12 South by Halloween. So I think it's fair to look at it both ways. And I think that's why I give it the B-. A good season, but, not anything that's going to be like, go down in the annals of Bruin greatness.
Yeah, and I think that's completely fair. I think maybe with a bowl win, we can get that up to maybe to like a B, solid B. But B-, 8-4. They didn't necessarily beat a team with a winning record. The defense was still sporadic, and we're going to be talking about, Asanero moving on in just a second. But there were a lot of bright spots, too. This offense ranked number 1 in scoring in the Pac-12. DTR really made that jump to kind of star status by the end of the season, something I never anticipated as someone that's followed UCLA football. That USC win to the Cal win, the hurdle that he did over Chris Steele in, the Coliseum is going to be something that's going to be talked about for a long time amongst UCLA fans. 6 touchdown performance, hanging 62. Granted, it was not a great USC team, but that's still your rival at the end of the day. The defensive coordinator job is open, and we're going to talk about Chip coming back in a second. Is there any names you're potentially hearing there? I hear something about, Jimmy Lake, maybe a Gary Patterson has been thrown around online. I don't know how realistic that is, but I think Jimmy Lake has a chance to go there, given that they hired the linebackers coach away from Washington. What's your kind of stance on who they got to bring in for the defensive coordinator? Because Asanero, let's face it, he did a horrible job when he was in UCLA. and they need to bring some new blood in there to kind of revitalize that side of the ball.
Yeah, a lot of names being thrown around. Gary Patterson's been connected with some openings at Texas as far as analysts. Jimmy Lake, I don't know if that would be the best move just because he's had some question marks about, his character and some issues with players. So that would be some red flags there. Not to get into names, but just generally speaking, I think they're looking at maybe, a young up and coming guy from a group of five conference, or maybe somebody with UCLA ties from a Power Five or an NFL position. So I think they're going to have a lot of opportunities here to get somebody who's really good, can infuse some energy and some youth, as they just did with that hire with the tight ends coach Jeff Ferris, a young and up and coming guy. I could see them making a similar kind of move with the defensive coordinator to kind of imbue some youth and energy into the defensive side of the ball. So those would be kind of my kind of guidelines for what I think they can get in that position.
Well, energy is much needed. That secondary had been problematic for 4 straight years with Azzanaro, consistently ranking in the hundreds. The rush defense was pretty solid last year, ranked top 25 within the entire nation. But, I mean, when you're giving up close to 30 points a game or over in each of your 4 years, that's problematic. They've got to fix that side of the ball. Chip re-signing to UCLA. Taking a little bit of a pay cut. He's making $4.7 million as opposed to the $5.2 he's made for the 4-year deal. His tenure has not been perfect, Ben. 18-25. Didn't even beat a team with a winning record this past season. Do you think he was the right guy to bring back? Because I do think there was a stipulation there where Jarman was happy to bring him back, but there was no way in hell that Azzanaro could come back with him. I'm on the boat where I do think it was the right hire to give him another chance at resurrecting UCLA football. But I want to hear your stance as someone that's a lot closer to the situation than I am.
Yeah, I can kind of see both sides of it, and I want to give you a quick numbers correction. I mean, he did the $4.7 million is the average salary of his 4-year deal. It's actually a slight increase because when you get into the 5.6. That includes a retention bonus. So you have to kind of take that off the table when you're going flat salary. So I know that the numbers can get a little funky and confusing, but he does technically get a slight raise with this new deal. But, I can kind of see both sides of it. I mean, I understand, my understanding is Martin Jarman's point of view is the trajectory is on the rise. The first and second years aren't nearly as important as what he's done the last 2 years, where, last year he was on the brink of a kind of a breakthrough. And then this year they got to 8-4 and they thought that they had a very good chance to win that bowl game and have an excellent season. So I can see that side, but then, the flip side, and I'm sure you read the column that I wrote, right after the Utah loss, where I was pretty harsh on Chip Kelly, and then there's no doubt about it. And my point of view was that I just Martin Jarman wants to be elite, and I don't think this is elite football. And as I've thought more about it, I did an interview with Pac-12 Radio earlier this week, and they asked me about it again, and I kind of distilled it a little bit better. I think when you think about a head football coach, there's kind of 3 areas that they need to excel in, right? I mean, there's the coaching aspect with the X's and O's and the recruiting. The X and O's and the culture. That's one. Then there's the recruiting aspect. And then there's the ambassadorship of the program, where you're talking about relations with media, with fans and donors. And those are, I think, the 3 big aspects, right? And I think that Chip clearly is excelling in the coaching on the offensive side. He's excelling in the culture side. I think they've got some really good players and people in the program. And I think that, making a move with the defensive coordinator is a step in the right direction. But, the recruiting side, I think, is a mixed bag. They've clearly, I think, not been elite in high school recruiting. The transfer portal is a different story. They've done very well there, and they continue to bring in a lot of good players. So give them credit for that. But that's been kind of a mixed bag. And then you go to ambassadorship, and I think it's fair to say that's probably where he's lagging the most, right? I mean, the relations with the fans, the donors, and the media, I think it's pretty fair to say you got to give him either like a D or an F in that department. I don't think he articulates his vision. I think he can be kind of an unnecessary pain in the butt when he doesn't need to be with the media. So, I think you put all those factors together and you're looking at somebody who overall, is probably in the C to C minus range. And that was kind of my point, is that, I think you can do better. I think you can find somebody who across the board excels at a much higher rate. But as I said, there's arguments to be made on both sides. I certainly understand where Martin Jarmont's coming from and the reasons that he decided to go forward with Chip Kelly.
Yeah. And, I was looking at the candidate portal and, there's a lot of good coaching names that were rumored to be potentially out there. Joe Brady was my guy, former offensive coordinator for LSU, led them on that historic run in 2019 to 2020. Matt Campbell, Iowa State. I'm always impressed by those coaches that build up a program that don't really recruit that well, but just exceed talent year in and year out. Did you guys have a name that you were potentially interested in to take over the reins if Chip was let go after that January 16th buyout date?
Yeah, I would have swung for the fences and gone for Dave Aranda. My understanding is from people I know who are fairly well connected to him that he is interested in UCLA, which is kind of mind blowing to me that you could get a guy of that caliber and bring him in. A Southern California ties guy who, obviously I think would be somebody who would excite the fan base and win at a high level from the get go. But my understanding, look, Martin Jarmont was all in on Chip Kelly. Give him credit for that. He decided what he wanted to do, and he went and got it, and he got it done. So, we could always play the what if game, but Martin thinks that Chip Kelly could be the guy long term, and that remains to be seen. I certainly think that next year sets up favorably for Chip Kelly, and I think that the floor for next year is 9 wins. I really do. I think that you look at that non-conference schedule. You got SC at home. You've got Utah at home. Those are winnable games. I think that this is probably a 9+ win team next year. So it makes a lot of sense to bring back Chip and when you look at it through that lens.
Dave Aranda would have been a phenomenal hire. He's really done an excellent job taking over from Matt Rule, a former UCLA assistant himself. He's really rebuilt the program at Baylor. I want to touch on the two big returnees, and Dorian Thompson-Robinson is coming back. I think a large portion of the fan base was very excited for Dylan Gabriel. This kid had 70 career touchdown passes to 14 interceptions from Central Florida, ultimately chose to go to Oklahoma after committing to UCLA to reunite with Jeff Lebby, his former quarterbacks coach from Central Florida. We're a little bummed. Okay, I guess we'll take DTR back. But on the hindsight of that, he really showed improvement last year, and it started in the turnover category. Only 6 interceptions last year. Fumbling had been a serious issue for him over the years. He only lost 1 fumble last year compared to, I believe, 11 the prior year. So the turnovers were limited. He had the most rushing yards in his career at 609 with 9 touchdowns. Granted, he's not going to have the same weapons he had last year. Like you've mentioned in many of your articles, Anderson and Ryan are gone. Phillips and Dulcich are gone. He's going to have to really rebuild that. They have gotten some nice receiving options from the transfer portal, Jake Bobo being one of them. Titus, the wide receiver from Central Florida. How excited should UCLA fans be that Dorian Thompson-Robinson is returning next year?
Yeah, I think it's a very nice setup for UCLA, given that, I think the whole point of his returning was to kind of show he can be the quarterback that he was in those last 3 games for a full season, right? Because if you are that quarterback over the course of a full season, then you're on the Heisman Trophy radar, which I think that I absolutely expect him to be next year to start the season, especially given that non-conference schedule. I think they open with 2 winnable Pac-12 games as well. So we could be looking at, I think it's like a 5-0 UCLA team playing Utah at the Rose Bowl, which would be an amazing scenario that could bring a lot of buzz back to a program that needs it. So, there's a lot of upside here. I think that Dorian saw that. There's such a huge comfort level with him and Chip Kelly. And, with Zach Charbonnet coming back, They can kind of hit the ground running and not lose a ton, except for, they're going to need to find some offensive linemen. I don't want to downplay that. And then also Dorian's going to have to find some new receivers. But, as you mentioned, they got 2 guys coming in from the transfer portal, and then a lot of quality depth of guys who really were kind of underutilized, like guys like Logan Loya. Casimir Allen flashed in the season, but I think he could have a much bigger role. So you got some options there. You got Mike Martinez coming off that injury that ended his season prematurely. So I think that Dorian's going to have a lot to work with, and I think that I really do expect. I'd be surprised if UCLA did not start 5-0, and I'll say that right now as somebody who's been as critical as Chip Kelly as anybody on the planet. I think UCLA will start 5-0 next season.
I think you're spot on with that. The 3 out-of-conference games are very winnable. I mean, they more than winnable. They should be penciled in W's, and then you start the season relatively easy within the Pac-12. The guy I want to transition to is Charbonnet, because just given the lifespan of a running back, I thought it was a no-brainer this guy was going to the NFL. He is built differently than some of the running backs we've had recently. Your Joshua Kellys, your Demetric Feltons, guys like that. 6'1", 220 pounds. Like, this guy can move, has some of the strongest legs I've seen at the running back position. We also do a running back segment for our draft podcast for LA Football Network. We compared him to Marshawn Lynch. Like, that is how strong his legs are when he gets in the open field. They call him the Terminator for a reason, right? Charbonnet is a beast. How shocked were you that he came back? Because where I was at, it was a 10 out of 10. I had no expectations of him coming back. Such a gift for UCLA next year.
Well, if he's the Terminator, then he has to come back, right? That's my dad joke that I went with that I think works. He's kind of an interesting person. He's kind of a hard guy to get a read on. We didn't talk to him a lot this year. Didn't really get a good feel for his personality. But as you said, I think he is built different. I think he wants to win at a high level. I think he understands that this is a time of his life that he'll never get back. And, let's face it, UCLA has not – we haven't mentioned this. They still have not gone to the Rose Bowl game since 1990, not January 1st, 1999. And he could be a part of that if they have that hot start and then beat Utah and keep that rolling. It's definitely on the table for this team next year. So, I think he wants to be part of something special. I think he is a special player, and I think he's obviously very talented and could have gone to the NFL. So all credit to him for giving this one more run. It shows that he's very team-oriented and unselfish.
Absolutely. And a lot to be desired with UCLA football moving forward. We got the coach back, we got our quarterback back, and we got the Terminator back. It's going to be a fun year. We still got to make some big-time replacements, losing Sage, the tight ends coach, who I know Ferris came in today, but Sage really elevated that tight end room. You look at the last 3 tight ends we've had there, whether it's Dulcich, whether it's Asiasi, who transferred from Michigan, Caleb Wilson really made some big plays out there too. And then Justin Fry going to Ohio State, that's a huge loss. He did wonders for that offensive line and really was an underrated part of that rushing offense, leading the Pac-12 for a couple of years. Ben, I just want to thank you so much for coming on, and I think we got a bright future for our UCLA football.
Yeah, I think that next year's setting up very, very well for UCLA, whether you're, as I said, a glass half full or half empty. I think that 2022 UCLA football is going to be very interesting and a lot of fun for people.
Awesome. Bruin Bible, we are